Hi, and welcome to my first ever podcast. I'm actually really nervous, so please bear with me. My first guest today, I'm really pleased to bring to you, is Oova Matique. Oova is a singer, songwriter, and vocalist hailing from Wakefield, West Yorkshire. He's been working within the music industry now for 30 years plus, crewing for international bands and artists, and more recently, he's been employed as a local events officer at Leeds City Council. Oova is possibly best known, though, for his performances with some of the hottest names in the North, such as the Urbanizer, Kel Islam, the Bluefoot Project, and many more as a live MC. He's a musician that I have admired and respected for a very long time. And more recently, I'm proud to say he is my partner in life and crime. So did you like your bio?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, right. So yeah. Anyway, I tried really hard. This is my first podcast, Oova. I'm nervous.
I can tell.
So bear with me.
Tell.
So, what did you think when I asked you to take part in this?
It was a bit daunting, really, trying to choose 10 songs that that was my journey in music. I think because I've got such an eclectic taste, I was, it was hard to break it down to just 10.
I know you did like 2 or 3 different sort of incarnations of your 10 tracks, didn't you? So I'm presuming you found it really difficult to make the choice.
Yeah, because there was so much good stuff left out,
Yeah, what did you leave out?
Probably all my heavy metal times. Although I think a lot of my musical taste went with the length of my hair at the time.
What? Exponentially, sort of as your hair grew.
As it got longer and longer, until eventually I could get dreads. Yeah.
I love it. So, what do you hope that people will get from listening to your story?
I think it just, you have to have an open mind to music, and it just, you grow within it.
Yeah.
You grow within your music, and you find out, I started, like my podcast starts from being, sort of like 7 or 8, 9, 10 years of age, where I wasn't even able to buy music at that time, but it was already starting to influence me.
Absolutely. So, your first choice then, it's Ride a White Swan by T-Rex. So, why did you choose it?
It was, first of all, the album cover, Electric Warrior. It's got to be the most classic album cover as far as a rock album cover goes, but I just loved him. I just thought it was amazing. My sisters were in love with Mark Bolan and T-Rex, and to me it was the ultimate rocker as a kid. He was,
Perfect. So how much do you think Mark Bolan influenced your performances today?
Greatly. I wouldn't ever consider myself a fantastic singer, and bands I've worked with before and artists I've worked with before have always been very happy with my performance. Maybe not my musical performance, but my performance. So yeah, it always influenced me.
Perfect. So your second choice moves seamlessly into David Bowie. So why is your next choice a David Bowie track then?
I think Rebel was the track I've chosen, and just the fact that the rebel side of it, it was like you could see. Not only was he a fantastic showman, but he was, he was a guy that every single album he ever produced was different, and it made me realise that you could morph yourself into whatever you wanted, really. And, as far as morphing yourself into whatever you want to be, I think Bowie's the king.
He certainly is, yeah. You can't really mention Bolan without Bowie, can you? Because they were contemporaries at the time. I remember watching a documentary all about Mark Bolan, who it talked about when he moved to an area of London where all the musicians sort of hung out, and he was really struck and also possibly a little bit jealous of David Bowie, because David Bowie seemed to be the front man that he wanted to be in every sense, the way he looked, the way he acted. And I think Bolan recognised that being that sort of frontman would set him apart from just being a musician or a songwriter.
Absolutely, far superseded him as the ultimate rock star that I thought Mark Bolan was as a child. But I often wonder where Bolan would be now had he not passed so young.
Absolutely, absolutely. You broadened out your listening then towards David Bowie. So what was it about this specific song, Rebel Rebel, that pricked your ears up?
It was about rebelliousness. It was, Mark Bolan wrote songs that were, looking back now, about girls, really. Whereas, like I said earlier, Bowie sort of morphed himself into so many different things. But, Rebel Rebel, it was just,
So how old were you listening to all of this around that time? Were you buying records at that time, or were you too young?
Not yet. I was forced to listen to whatever my sisters brought into the house, Being the next to youngest of 5, I didn't have a choice of what I listened to. But, what I liked. And
I hear you. So your next track, obviously we've had 2 non-reggae tracks, but the next few are going to be pure reggae, which I love. So your next track, song choice was Sideshow by Barry Briggs. So what made you choose that one? When did you hear it, actually?
I would have been about 11 years old on a fairground ride in Garthorpe. And I didn't even know it was reggae at the time.
Right.
I had no idea what reggae music was. I'd never heard of Bob Marley. And it just pricked something up in my ears, and I was like, I really like this. I didn't even know why I liked it. It was just so different. And it would be, if I had a top 10 reggae list now, it would always be on there.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic track.
Perfect. So let's look at your 4th choice then. Bit of a departure. So, you first heard reggae music, but then you've gone straight back to the punk era with God Save the Queen by the Sex Pistols then. So tell me about why you've chosen that one.
I got pocket money. I had a choice of what I wanted to buy, and in fact it wasn't the Sex Pistols the first thing I ever bought. It was Looking After Number 1 by the Boomtown Rats. But if you were in the sort of new wave punk era at the time, they would have benchmarked the Pistols with everything. And never mind the What's It's album.
Yes.
That was great. Again, it was the rebellious thing. I wanted to have the word there written on front of my record sleeve in the living room where my mum and dad were. But
I loved it. Yeah, absolutely.
But a fantastic album. And I think watching the Pistols drive down the bars down the Thames after it had been banned from Radio 1 was the ultimate,
Love it. So in terms of the rebellious nature of punk, I just want to stay with that for a little bit. Music was quite censored at that point, and I know that this particular track was banned, wasn't it? But it only kind of served to make young people kind of go after it, if you like. So talking about your parents then, what did they think about the music you were listening to at the time?
If I wasn't told to turn it down, it was just raucous rubbish played by unruly, disrespectful louts, and it made me even love it more. Do you know what I mean? I loved it.
Nice. So do you think you were a rebel then?
Not really.
So how come you identified with it so much then?
I think as you grow up and you get the chance to wear the clothes that you want to wear. I mean, I didn't go full sort of like safety pins and tartan trousers, but it was cool to have a pair of ripped jeans on.
It was a perfect excuse to be able to wear your ripped jeans.
And that's what New Wave was about. That was the whole punk thing was about, was just wear what you want.
Yeah, I hear you. So that then brings me to your next choice, song 5. So we've got Peaches by the Stranglers then. I actually really, really adored this track, but I didn't hear it until I was at university. I was probably about 19 when I heard this track. Wow. So, I was quite old. But why did you pick the Peaches? Peaches, by the Stranglers.
I don't know. I mean, I'd started by this point to sort of get into the heavier side of punk. There was new punk bands every week. The punk new wave era, it was so prolific. There were singles out every 10 minutes. You know? But the Stranglers were the heavier side of it, and I realised it was pushing me towards the rockier end of it all. But Peaches was just so different. I mean, I don't even know what genre you can put Peaches in. It certainly wasn't punk. But again, always been driven by tracks that just tweak something in me. Not really, I didn't really know why. Yeah. But yeah.
I hear you. So it's really clear to me you were always listening out for differences in music and harking back to that old kind of like the thing that piqued your interest in the first place, which was David Bowie's kind of innovation. And I think this track, Peaches, that falls into that category really well. What else did you like about that track?
Keyboards. Wow, I've never heard keyboards before. I've never been aware of keyboards before.
Yeah.
And I could see that my discerning ear was starting to pick up on individual things. Like you said, going back to Bowie, it was anything that was innovative and different, you know.
Yeah, I hear you. And also, you told me a little story, which I'm going to share now with you all. Oova says that one of the reasons why he's chosen this track is because it was the first time... In fact, no, you can say it.
I'd never heard the word clitoris on the record before. It was... Anyway, enough of that. Thanks for that.
Any rudeness at all, absolutely. Yeah. You can really hear, though, in this particular track, the influences, can't you? You know, I could hear when I heard it from the first time, gosh, this is like a reggae track. It's like jazz, it's like soul, it's pretty much all there. And I also would say about this track in particular is it seemed to cross racial boundaries as well, because as many sort of my white friends listened to this track, but then so did my black friends as well. There's loads of rap stars that actually cite this track as being one of their biggest influences. So I kind of think it's great when music can cross boundaries in that way. It really is, isn't it? So your next choice, wow, song 6. 1 in 10 by UB40, one of my favourite tracks ever. So why this song then?
By this time I'd left school and I was doing what I wanted, wearing the clothes I wanted, having the haircut I wanted, which was at that point instantly scared. And it was just, I don't know, it was just the two-tone sky really was fantastic. Yeah. And at the time I was really very proud to be a skinhead, a very smart skinhead. Listening to bands like The Specials, Selector, UB40, but this track, because it was a time when there was so much social deprivation. As a 16-year-old care leaver, I struggled to find work, but it also resonated not just with me, but my entire peer group at the time.
I hear you. And it's interesting, actually, you know, when we talked about you being a skinhead, my association with skinheads was something to be feared. So I remember being little and being told, in no uncertain terms, you know, those skinheads, you need to stay away from them because they are racist. They could attack you. They could, you know, really, really hurt you. And so I just remember feeling this visceral sense of fear whenever I saw skinheads on the street. And it's weird because there's also a connection with reggae and skinheads. So what do you think it was that created that kind of climate? What do you think was going on?
I don't know. I think the lines were very blurred. I mean, with punk and new wave, you had skins, but, you know, real neo-Nazi skins who had nothing to do with the two-tone movement at the time, really. Through my education in music now, I realise that, you know, the skinhead sort of movement has always been close to the black music scene. You know, we even revert back to Bob Marley and the punky reggae party.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I think the lines were a little bit blurred around the new wave time because the whole dress as you want. Yeah. A lot of people did look absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
But you soon scratch the surface and find out they weren't.
Absolutely.
You know, some really lovely people under all those safety pins and
absolutely
and things.
And tattoos. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I certainly, you know.
So bearing that in mind then, were you ever aware, or you and your contemporaries ever aware, that actually people, particularly little black kids like me, might actually be scared of you?
No. I mean, I certainly never intended it that way. I wasn't wearing it as a hard badge. To me, it was, you know, I was a proud, very smart skinhead.
I hear you.
You know, that was
I hear you. All right, so we're going to move on to song 7 now, and again another big time favourite of mine, Under Me Sleng Teng. Tell me about the first time you ever heard Under Me Sleng Teng by Wayne Smith.
It was 1985. I had just come back from Butlins.
You worked at Butlins.
I was a comedian redcoat at Butlins.
Who worked at Butlins? Tings. Okay, you got to tell me more about that.
A lot of it's a bit sort of X-rated, but no, it was fun. It was great. But you know, it was hard work.
Yeah.
You know, two years at Butlins was like 4 seasons because it wasn't a camp as such. It was a hotel. It never closed.
Yeah.
People went there to die. But yeah. After 2 years, I was fairly washed out and ended up coming back to my roots, coming back to Wakefield, and walked into my sister's house, and on the stereo was Under My Sleng by Warren Smith.
Gosh.
And it blew me away.
It's a strange feeling, isn't it, when you hear music for the first time? And so when you heard this, like, how did it make you feel?
It was amazing. To hear it properly on a sound system, we'd go over to Bradford with my sister and, you know, to reggae dancers and things, and to hear it on a sound system, it wasn't just the fact that I liked the track, it made me realise about separation in music. And I'd never heard people use a crossover before and drop the bass out and bring the, you know, the tops and the mids in and stuff. And I was hooked. It was just, you know.
So tell me then, did you frequent the blues club?
Yeah, far too often. Sometimes I go on Friday and not get back till Monday, and quite often I'll be the only white guy in there, you know. But I was hooked. I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Absolutely. And the thing is, again, you know, just like the punk stereotype, almost a stereotype in reverse, if you like, because at the time, you sort of also went to Chapel Down, didn't you, in Leeds, and the impression that was always given about the blues was that they were kind of unwelcoming to white people. And I know there's a lot of love for you currently in Chapeltown from back then. So how did you come to feel so safe and so much a part of the scene, given the stereotype?
I think I went there and treated the place with respect. And, you know, I didn't abuse it. I went there and visited it and was able to walk away and go home. Sometimes it wasn't for 2 or 3 days, but eventually I did get home, and eventually I just became a regular face.
Absolutely,
you know?
Absolutely. So did you hear the next song that you've chosen at the Blues?
No, again, I thank my big sister Mandy for this, but World of Reggae Music by Annie Kamoze, it was from his mini album, self-titled Annie Kamoze album.
It is a beautiful, beautiful album, isn't it? It's like one of my... You played this album for me, and, you know, we were kind of... It was nighttime, wasn't it? And you just put this album on and you just let it play out. And every single song on this album... You know, you only know Ina Kamoze, don't you, from Here Comes the Hot Stepper. Yeah. But actually, his voice on this album is so, so beautiful. So what draws you to this particular song then? World of Reggae? World of Music, sorry.
It could have been any track off the album, like you said. It was an album of, for me, singles. Every one I would have bought as a single, but it was my first introduction to the magnificent Sly and Robbie as well. Yeah. And, you know, harking back to Under My Sleng and the separation in music there, my ears, again, were being educated, and I was learning from that. And I started to listen to production.
So for the purposes of this podcast then, I know who Sly and Robbie were, but not everybody will. So who were Sly and Robbie?
For me now, probably the best drummer and bass player production team I'd ever heard, and probably still are. They went on to produce so many other stuff. You know, they worked for on the Slave to the Rhythm album by Grace Jones, another album I absolutely love. You know,
it's amazing just how eclectic they were, isn't it? And how they were able to move between genres really easily. Like 1 minute, you know, doing sort of reggae, and then the next, you know, like you say, Grace Jones. Like what a complete sort of departure. So we're going to move on now, aren't we, to your penultimate song. So what is it, and why did you choose it?
Again, you made this so difficult. You know,
Sorry.
Choose 10 songs. It's so easy. By this time, my love for reggae was entrenched. I was, you know, every weekend I was in a reggae dance. I was buying records by the shed load. And probably one of the most prolific artists at the time was Courtney Melody.
Got you.
He had a strange ear to his voice, and he could do anything. He could, you know, sing songs that were, descriptive of the hard times in Jamaica at the time. But he could also sing whimsical love songs as well.
Yeah,
and,
I hear you.
I just think, people at that time were telling stories.
Yeah.
That's all it was. And I think, people never really or didn't really understand what a lot of the songs were about. And I was the same.
Yeah.
I had to sort of learn patois,
Yeah.
if you want, to understand the stories I was being told.
You have one of the most authentic Jamaican accents I think I have ever heard. So why do you think it's so accurate then?
Well, because when I first go get home, me can't. We laugh at. We look at me like that. When me first go get home, I would speak in a broad Yorkshire accent. And man there couldn't understand me. I couldn't understand them. They say, yeah, man, to everything. So then me I go home and me listen and me patois to the point where me could understand the story. Them singers and MCs were telling me.
Yeah.
And I true love me I finding it there.
You can't actually quite sort of understand, I don't think, the Jamaican accent without knowing how to speak it and without knowing.
I think that's what I found. I couldn't speak it properly till I couldn't hear it properly.
Yeah,
until
I
I could
hear
speak
you.
it.
I hear you. So, how did you understand the lyrics when you heard them, and then how did that then translate to you then writing lyrics like that?
I listened to thousands of hours of it, and I found myself imitating and sort of honouring, if you want, the MCs and singers that I'd heard,
Yeah.
and it certainly helped me with my my word choice and everything else, and just knowing how to articulate yourself.
Yeah.
In that style.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting as well because reggae music for me was always a little bit like the thing that my brother listened to. It was never really anything that I listened to. I was more kind of, I wanted to hear jazz and I wanted to hear soul, and in a lot of ways I was learning classical piano, so that's another thing that I really wanted to hear. So you have actually educated me on reggae music, which is odd, but that's the way it is.
I think I was very lucky though, Rachel. I was born in the 60s.
Yeah.
Grew up through the 70s, the 80s and 90s, all massive eras for music.
Yeah.
And I think I've just been spoiled.
Absolutely. So will reggae always be your favourite genre of music then?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Your taste is unbelievably eclectic though, isn't it?
Very. I think I'm very sort of what's the word? Spoiled, really.
Absolutely. So which brings me to track 10. Now, track 10, I think, is possibly one of the more important ones because track 10 is actually one of ours. It's Growing Up by the Bluefoot Project. So tell me then, why did you pick that one?
I think right from being asked by your very good self if I would join the Bluefoot Project and bring my reggae vibe and flavour to it, something I'm still flattered about to this day.
You shouldn't be, because I watched you perform and it was brilliant, and I was just like, we need something else, we need a bit more sort of dynamism to the band. And so I thought, there's this guy I know, let me go ask him. And you said yeah, luckily, that's great. So what does this song mean to you?
It's I think it just shows the way I've grown.
Yeah.
I think looking back over my choice of 10 tracks there, you can see how I've grown, how I've progressed. But growing up was not only about my musical growth, it's about, I think we both went through this thing where you're a musician, we played Glastonbury on a couple of occasions by this time. We'd had a really successful album out. And we stuck Growing Up on the end of the album.
We did.
And it
you
never
should
got
tell
heard.
that story.
Well, it never got heard. Matthew, bless him, love you, Matt, decided we would have a secret track. And normally secret tracks at the end of an album, a couple of minutes wait, and then, oh, look, there's another track. Not Matthew. Matthew decided it would be 12 minutes, 48 seconds, by which time most people had switched the CD off and put it back in the case. So Growing Up wasn't even heard, and that's why I think, it's still, for us now, we're still doing it live now.
And it's funny when we perform it as well, and some of the people that used to be into us back in the day, they're like, oh, oh, that Growing Up song's really nice, but how come I've never heard it? And I'm like, listen to the end of the album, mate. Listen to the end of the album. So, okay, so we've reached the end of your sort of 10-track selection, and I'm going to ask you some final questions now that I'm going to ask all of my guests. Okay. All right? So, question number 1. What is next for Oova in life?
As long as you don't fall out with me. I think just to keep writing and producing with the Bluefoots. And if I can do that, I can live out my life happy. And just watch my children and my grandchildren grow and prosper. So,
question 2. You ready for this one? If you could go back in time and give yourself any advice, what would it be?
Don't grow up.
And you never have. I have that on good authority. You never have. No. All right, last question then. Which one of your songs would you pass on to your grandchildren and why?
Probably Growing Up.
Yeah.
Because it shows where I've changed and everything, and it, I think you have to keep what's important in life, and for me it was my kids, and they came first.
Absolutely. So first of all, I'd like to say thank you for being my maiden voyage, as it were.
It's been a pleasure. It's and not as daunting as I thought it would be.
No, absolutely. And there's just one more thing I need to tell you to do.
Yes, please.
Put bins out.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much for joining me. See you next time. Bye.